everyone, this is Dr. Amanda with USCA's Writing Center. Today I'm going to go over some of the most common errors in college writing in a grammar review. For the full list of the top 20 errors in college writing, look at the PDF on this webpage, or if you own Andrea Lunsford's Easywriter, look for the top 20 list there. This is, as I said, the list of the top 20 errors in college writing. We're all guilty of these errors. I'm going to be going over the issues in green. I'm not going over commas because we'll have a workshop on that. And I've not included any of the errors associated with documentation or citation because I don't know what documentation style you're using. And we have workshops on MLA, APA, and other styles on our webpage already. Here's the rest of the list. Before we get started on grammar, or grammars, I want to explain that academic English is no one's first language. As an English professor, I teach American Academic English. It's a form of edited American. As a human, I speak Appalachian English, or more specifically, Northern Appalachian English. So there are many Englishes and many grammars, all of them related to context. I don't like the word proper when it comes to grammar, and I really don't even like the word errors, because it implies that there's some idea of correct and incorrect that's separate from context, and that's not a thing that exists. Think about how different some varieties of English are in the United States. Now consider that English is one of the most highly spoken languages in the world thanks to the British custom of overthrowing anyone not British. We don't speak or even write the same English as Canadians do. We have very different grammatical rules and even different spellings. We even have different expectations of article use, as anyone who's heard a Canadian reference going to hospital rather than to the hospital can attest. Edited American English has a very important role in American culture. It's what's sometimes expected from newscasters, politicians, educators, spokespeople, and in academic writing. The problem is that because of its important role, people start to think of any deviations from edited American English as less than, and that's simply not true. My non-standard English dialect is often ridiculed or kindly corrected when it shouldn't be. So I want you to keep the idea that edited academic English is just one of many Englishes, no better or worse than others. The grammar rules here don't apply to all Englishes, but they are what's expected of edited academic English, and that's what your teachers unfortunately expect as well. So that's what I teach, but I will invite you to join me in the land of code switching where we move back and forth all the time. It's fun here, and once you figure out the rules for edited academic English, you'll have a great time intentionally breaking them. We have to know them first. You may have seen this book before in your English 101, 102, and 201 courses, or you may have seen one like it. There's a lot of guides to writing. Easywriter is my favorite one. So this is a guide to edited American academic English. If you have questions, it has answers. I highly recommend it. You may have one already, or you can usually find a used copy for a few bucks. Even a new copy is around $20 to $25 at the most. Keep it once you graduate because, and I hope this doesn't shock anyone, you still have to write things once you graduate. Keep it on your desk at your dream job. So let's talk about grammar now. We're talking again about edited American academic English. If we're talking about grammar, we need to know some terms. So this is going to be a review for everyone, but I think it's good to review these terms. Traditional parts of speech. A noun is a person, place, or thing. Pronouns substitute the place of nouns. Verbs are doing or being words. Conjunctions join things. And there are other parts of speech, but we're really just looking at these today. Some words can work as multiple parts of speech because English is kind of an insane language. That's such a happy face. I can't face that mountain of work. In the first sentence, face is a noun, but in the second sentence, face is a verb. And what's even more difficult about language is the fact that in the second sentence, the mountain isn't literal, and the statement in the first sentence could be sarcastic. Maybe their face isn't happy at all. Now that we know our parts of speech, let's look at the parts of a sentence. The subject of a sentence tells the reader who or what the sentence is about. The verb tells the reader what the action or state of the subject is. And the object of a sentence tells the reader who or what is affected by the subject's action. At the very least, you need two things, three really, to create a complete sentence: a subject, a verb, and occasionally an object. And the reason I say occasionally an object is going to be clear in a second. She ate the cookie. She, subject, ate, verb, the cookie, object. So we've got our terms now. I know grammar can be boring. We're going to add a little bit of mystery in a second. But grammar is important. From these simple units of language, we can create some rather unique sentences. Once we start combining sentences with clauses and adding adjectives, adverbs, descriptors, super interesting things can happen. We can create worlds with words. Words are magic, which is why they call it spelling, which is a hashtag dad joke, but also factual. So let's start with something related to spelling anyway. The number one error in college writing. But first, let's introduce Sherlock Holmes. Or the Sherlock if you'd prefer. Either's fine with me. Now, the number one error in college writing is wrong word errors. Wrong word errors are the top error among college writers. Does that surprise you? Well, it doesn't surprise me because I read a lot of student papers, and people sometimes use the word they almost mean instead of the word they actually mean. Wrong word errors occur for several reasons, but usually it's a result of a bit of laziness or rushing on the writer's part. I'm guilty of these too. Sometimes the word is a misspelling of the word you meant, which means don't trust that spell checker. Sometimes the word is related to the word that makes sense for your writing, but isn't the right word, which means don't trust that thesaurus. Either way, there's a difference between the word prescience, prescience, and presence. Spell check won't know which one you mean. It'll just give you a bunch of options. So let's look at some examples. Sherlock Holmes had a domineering prescience. No, that's not right. He had a domineering presence. He was accustomed to grisly murders, which we might overlook if we didn't know that grizzly, G-R-I-Z-Z-L-Y, meant bears, and G-R-I-S-L-E-Y meant gross. He often spent hours poring over evidence. Ooh, we've got a lot of homonyms in there. Out loud, this sounds fun. He often spent hours poring over evidence. But that is not the right hours. That is not the right pouring. And that is not evidence. He often spoke aloud, so we've got a wrong word error there, and a bizarre wrong word error there, manner wrong word error there, while considering the clues. And yes, clues, C-L-E-W-S, is a word that spell check will not catch, but you mean C-L-U-E-S. So how do we fix this? Well, don't rely on automatic things like spell checkers and thesauruses. These are super useful tools, but they aren't the authority in your paper. So please don't automatically hit OK. A lot of people do OK, and just accept what spell check or grammar check or thesaurus has offered. Well, that doesn't work at the college level. It really doesn't work at any level. Instead, take time to make sure their spelling suggestions are correct. Consider them before saying yes or no. If you're not sure whether or not that's the right word, use an online dictionary to look the word up. It's super easy. Just Google it. If you aren't sure about what a word means, don't use it. Don't rely on word processing programs. Don't rely on thesauruses. And lastly, read your paper out loud. That's my best tip for any revision strategy. When you read your paper out loud, what you'll notice is what you actually wrote instead of what you think you wrote. Because we tend to overlook because we know what we meant to say. Reading out loud slows us down and forces us to see what's actually on the page. All right, we're skipping ahead here to one of the most difficult things for any student, which is pronoun references. When confronted with a sentence like this, she believed it to be one of the most beautiful examples he had ever produced. I become confused. I have some serious questions like, she who? What is it? Who's he? What's going on here? The pronouns in this sentence, he, she, and it, don't refer to anything at all. Or at least I don't know what they refer to. That means they're vague. The proper word for what a pronoun refers to is the antecedent. The antecedent of every pronoun should be clear to the reader. If there's a question about what those pronouns refer to in your writing, your audience is going to become really confused. Things become even more confusing when there are multiple and that pronoun could replace. Help your reader out by being specific whenever you need to. This doesn't mean that you should avoid using pronouns, but that you should make sure that your pronouns have a clear rather than a vague reference. In the second sentence here, Sherlock remarked to Watson's friend that Watson could drink his water if he was thirsty. I have no idea who is drinking whose water. I've got too many he's, and none of them exactly make sense. One big tip for pronouns is that the pronoun you use should refer to the last proper noun before it. Logically, if pronouns refer to the last proper noun preceding it, then one should never, ever, ever use a pronoun other than I in the first sentence of any paragraph. Why? Well, because you need to be specific, and there's no proper noun preceding that pronoun. Maybe you were talking about Sherlock and Watson in the last paragraph, but a new paragraph is a new idea, and you should be specific for your readers' sakes. We're jumping forward again to number 8, unnecessary or missing capitalization. We need to capitalize proper nouns and adjectives, the first words of sentences, important words in titles, directional words, and family relationships. Almost everything else gets lowercase status. Oddly, we're one of the only languages that uses a capital first-person pronoun, I. I'm not sure what that says about us as a culture, but it is interesting. So let's take a look at these sentences. Sherlock Holmes ran to the Kroger to buy a Hershey bar last Tuesday. We're missing some capitalization here. Holmes, Kroger's, Hershey, and Tuesday all need to have their first letter capitalized. While he was there, he picked up a copy of Good Housekeeping, which is the title of a magazine, which means that the good and the housekeeping both need their first letter capitalized. Martha Stewart is a proper name. Let's capitalize the first letter of her name. Now, the third sentence here does the opposite. He was fairly sure that he wouldn't be making frog pincushions out of old socks. But this is a strange way to capitalize things. So we have some random capitalization in here that actually doesn't need to be there. It's distracting and it's a little bit confusing. And as a reader, I'm like, why are they capitalizing this? So it goes against the expectations and the rules for specific styles. One pro tip is that the style you use, whether it's APA, MLA, AP Chicago, or something else, usually has its own rules for capitalization. Follow those rules. How do we fix it? Well, Grammar Check can actually help with this. It'll underline those things. It'll say, hey, did you mean to capitalize Hershey bar? Don't trust it, though. It can mislead you. Please turn off your word processing program's automatic capitalization fix because it can and will get you into trouble. If you're unsure if something should be capitalized, look it up, Google it. Don't just guess and let it go. Number 10, faulty sentence structure. This is usually due to an issue with parallel structure. Parallel structure is about the verbs in your sentence. It suggests that like things should be kept like, so all the verbs should have the same form. Watson likes to swim, hike, and bike. Swim, hike, bike. All the same verb form. Watson likes to swim, to hike, and to bike. That's fine. It's a little weird, but okay. It's still the same. To, verb, to, verb, to, verb. Watson likes swimming, hiking, and bicycling, or swimming, hiking, and biking. That works. Watson likes to go swimming, hiking, and riding bicycles. That's a little bit strange, but okay. But if I start mixing these forms, Watson likes to go swimming, to hike, and bicycling, that sentence out loud sounds very strange, and this is a short sentence. Imagine a longer sentence with more complicated parts. Watson likes to go swimming, to hike, and bicycling. This is going to get confusing. Here's another example of a sentence with faulty parallel structure. He wanted 3 things out of life: to learn French, to make good friends, and learning about card playing. What's happened to the last part of that sentence? We have a structure that's being set up. To learn, to make. The last one should be and learning about. It should be to learn. To learn, to make, to learn. Since we've got 2 learns, let's rearrange this sentence a little bit and put those together. He wanted 3 things out of life: to learn French, to learn to play cards, and to make good friends. All of a sudden, that sentence is miles clearer. So how do we fix it? Pay attention to your verbs. Read out loud. If you hear a tangled sentence, make sure all the parts of your sentence are following the same verb form. If you have a verb that ends in ing, make sure all of the verbs in your sentence end in ing. So make like things like. It will help you out and it will clarify things for your reader. Another issue with verbs is unnecessary shifts in verb tense. When you shift verb tense, you're shifting between time, past, present, and future. All verbs have tenses that are variation of a verb form, or some combination of a verb and a helper or auxiliary verb. I swim, I swam, I will swim, I went swimming, I am swimming. Some of these swims take place in time. Some of them took place in the past, some will take place in the future, some are happening now, and some are even happening in a constant state. I swim, I do know how. When you shift from one verb tense to another mid-sentence, something odd happens with time. For example, Sherlock swam to the shore and stands on the dock. Read that sentence out loud to yourself. Something very strange has happened. This is actually physically impossible. If we were to divide this up into 2 sentences, Sherlock swam to the shore and Sherlock stands on the dock, We've got two complete sentences. We're combining those with the conjunction. We're taking off the second Sherlock there, which means we don't need a comma before our conjunction. This is not a compound sentence. This is one sentence where Sherlock is doing two things. Sherlock does A and B. But the problem is that swam and stands don't line up, not at least according to time. The author of these sentences needed to work a little bit harder to construct some parallel verb tenses. The sentence should read either Sherlock swam to the shore and stood on the dock, or Sherlock swims to the shore and stands on the dock. Each of those versions is correct. The meaning is slightly different, and the rule is be consistent. The fix to this is to read it out loud. Your tongue trips over mistakes like this. We hear mistakes in writing before we see them. So think about the logic of a sentence's structure. If something is in the past, use past tense verbs. If something is in the present, use present tense. Here's a bonus tip for when you're writing about literature. When you're discussing a work of literature, always use present tense to talk about it as a whole. The reason for this is simple. Authors, time periods, events, that can all happen in the past. But a work of literature is permanent. It exists in the now, and it should always be referred to in the present. The poem does something. The author did something. Let's move on to something that drives readers crazy. Unnecessary or missing apostrophes. The problem with apostrophes is that they're used in two ways in English. They're either used to show possession or to indicate a contraction. The reason this drives readers crazy is because it is, or it's, such an easy error to fix and an easy rule to memorize in some ways. To make a noun possessive, you add an apostrophe, as in Victoria, apostrophe S, secret, Victoria's secret. Don't use an apostrophe with possessive pronouns like ours, yours, his, hers, its, or theirs. So possessive pronouns like its, that's possessive. It does not get an apostrophe. There's a difference between its, its, and its, it apostrophe s. Its, with no apostrophe, is possessive. Its, with an apostrophe, is a contraction, a shortening and combining of two words. It, apostrophe s, can only mean it is or it has. That is, all it can mean. Look for its and its in your papers, and double check that they are correct. That is all you can do. Here's some more common apostrophe issues. We have some trouble with apostrophes because oftentimes these are homonyms. There, and there is something that trips people up. Look at my handy little graphic there. That might help you. Your and your is something that people on the internet are probably going to correct you on. Your, belonging to you, and you, apostrophe R-E, your, you are. It's and its we've already gone over. There's also some issues with plural possessives. Theirs is not their apostrophe s. It's theirs. Remember, that's a pronoun. So it's replacing a noun, and if we show possession with a pronoun, we do not use an apostrophe. There's a difference between the Smiths, all of the Smiths together, something belonging to them, and Jane Smith, just one Smith, apostrophe s, something that belongs to her. There's also a difference between students, which is plural, something belonging to all of the students, gets an apostrophe outside of that s, and students, student, apostrophe s, one student, something belonging to them. Children's, like students, is already plural, so it just gets an apostrophe s. Again, apostrophe errors are a good way to drive other people crazy. Let's move on to another pronoun issue. Another problem in college writing that centers on pronoun usage is lack of antecedent agreement. Remember, the antecedent is what the pronoun refers to. For example, Sherlock and Watson changed his mind about attending the party. The problem with the examples should be obvious. The pronouns don't add up. The pronoun he can't sufficiently replace the proper nouns Sherlock and Watson. Sherlock and Watson are two people with two separate minds, we hope, and the sentence should read, Sherlock and Watson changed their minds about attending the party. Pronouns and their antecedents must agree in three ways: person, number, and gender. Make sure all parts of your sentence agree. Here are some examples. A person should always do his or her best. Now, alternately, there is being accepted as a gender-neutral pronoun in MLA, APA, AP, and to a degree, Chicago styles. So you have a choice here. A person should always do his or her best, or a person should always do their best. There usually refers to something plural, but it is changing because English is a living language. People should always do their best, so we make it plural. That there is automatic. Mrs. Hudson, who is Sherlock and Watson's downstairs neighbor, tries to do her best. You try to do your best. Sherlock and Watson try to do their best. One should always do one's best. Sherlock and I try to do our best. Some words are always singular. Anyone, anybody, everyone, everybody, someone, somebody, no one, and nobody. No matter how plural they sound, get treated like singular. If you don't know the gender of the person, or don't care what the gender of the person is because it really doesn't matter, cool. If you have a professor who is, for some reason, hesitant to accept they, their, and them as a singular person pronoun that is not gender specific, we can work around that and still be inclusive. We can remedy the issue in one of two ways. Option 1 is to use both gender pronouns, he or she, his or her. But to be honest, I don't think that's very inclusive. The other option is to make things plural, they or their. So, instead of saying a person, we can use people. A person should always do his or her best, or people should always do their best. All of a sudden, we don't have that gender issue anymore. Double check to make sure everything is in agreement and read aloud. And be ready to defend if you want to use they, their, or them for a single person. If you want to defend your choice and you need to explain to a professor why they is a perfectly acceptable pronoun for a single person, come talk to us. We'll give you the tools to do it. Another pronoun antecedent issue that tends to confuse people involves the use of me and I. For example, Kyle and me went to the store, or Sherlock and me went to the party. This sentence is a little bit problem, and here's how you can tell. Take off the other person to check. We would never write the sentence like this, me went to the party. So if I take off Sherlock and just go with that, me went to the party. Ooh, no, I went to the party. The sentence should read, Sherlock and I went to the party. What about this? She and Francine changed their minds about attending the party. That's perfect. Why? Well, we know if we get rid of and Francine, she changed her mind about attending the party. We know that it should be she and not her. Who and its different variations can be tricky as well. Pay attention to who and its evil twin that. Lots of people have a difficult time distinguishing between that and who for some reason. But there's an easy way to remember. People are whos. Sherlock is a person who knows things. A phone can be a that, a tree can be a that, a bird can be a that, but a person is a person and is therefore a who. Think of Dr. Seuss if you must. All the who's down in Whoville did not live in thatville. So the sentence, people that try their best tend to succeed, is incorrect. The sentence, Sherlock is a person that knows things, is incorrect. People are whos. Don't take away a person's personhood by making them a that. Another who issue has to do with choosing between the different plural, singular, subject, possessive, and object forms of who when asking a question. To help you clearly decide on which form to use, rephrase the sentence to use him, her, he, she, or his, hers. For example, who do you think is attractive? He is attractive. Whom do you think we should invite to the party? We should invite her. Whose coat is this? It is hers. Whoever wants the first hot dog should say so. He wants the first hot dog. Whose and who apostrophe s are always very different. Will who and whom matter in the long run? Probably not. Language changes because it's a living thing, and people tend to use who for just about everything anymore. But for now, try to get it right because your professors will probably comment on it. Who or whom. The differences are the same as the differences between I or me, he or him, she or her. You did it to me, you did it to whom? He did it, who did it? She did it to him, she did it to whom? One easy way to remember is by looking at the form here. Who, he, she, they. Whom, him, her, them. Whose, his, hers, theirs. That's that possessive. Now, we're clear to number 19. We're almost there, so I know this is long. Thanks for sticking with us. Hyphens are my weakness. Hyphens join two or more words serving as a single adjective before a noun, something like a one-way street, or chocolate-covered peanuts, or a well-known author. However, When descriptions come after the noun, they're not hyphenated. The peanuts were chocolate covered, no hyphen, but chocolate hyphen covered peanuts does get a hyphen. The author was well known, doesn't get a hyphen, but well hyphen known author does. We also use hyphens with compound numbers like 46 or 63. So our much loved, much hyphen loved teacher was 63 years old, 60 hyphen 3. We got 2 hyphens in that sentence. We sometimes want to use a hyphen to avoid confusion or an awkward combination of letters. So if we re-hyphen sign a petition, sign it more than once, that's very different from re-signing from a job. So let's look at some examples. Nasty looking glass versus nasty looking glass. The first tells the reader that the mirror is nasty. So a looking glass is another name for mirror. It's nasty looking glass. The second says that the glass looks nasty. So it's a nasty looking glass. There's a difference between a fast moving van and a fast moving van. The first tells the reader that the moving van is fast. The second says that a van is moving fast. Doesn't have to be a moving van. It has to be any van. It's a fast moving van. Fancy pants store versus fancy pants store. The first tells the reader that the pants store is fancy. The second says that the store is for people who are snooty, aka fancy pants people. Do use hyphens with other things like prefixes. Ex hyphen, meaning former. So ex hyphen wife, ex hyphen husband. Self hyphen, all hyphen, or with the suffix hyphen elect. So ex hyphen husband, self hyphen assured, even things like mid hyphen September. They get a hyphen. All hyphen exclusive, anti hyphen American, T hyphen shirt is one we should be used to, mid hyphen 80s. These things automatically get hyphens. So how do we fix it? Oh, I don't know. Some styles of writing, MLA, APA, and AP have very specific rules on hyphens. Like very. There's whole sections of their style guides on hyphens. The thing that I do is if I think, ooh, maybe a hyphen goes here, is I look it up. Look it up in your Easywriter, look it up in a grammar guide, look it up on Google. Find out where that hyphen needs to go, or if it needs to even be there, because it can change the meaning of your sentence. Lastly, sentence fragments. Sentences need to be complete ideas. They need 2, usually 3 things. We started off this presentation looking at she ate the cookie. Now, subject, verb, object. She ate the cookie. Interestingly enough, the sentence Sherlock waited is a complete sentence in itself. Sherlock waited, where's the... What did he wait? Sherlock waited himself. But if we put a while in front of this, we actually make this into an incomplete thought. While Sherlock waited, where's the rest of that sentence? Where's the rest of that thought? While Sherlock waited, something had to happen. The detective Sherlock Holmes, well, there's no verb. There's no object in there. The detective Sherlock Holmes, if we added waited there, we'd have a complete sentence. If we had the detective Sherlock Holmes ate the cookie, complete sentence. With his fingertips together, what? With his fingertips together, what? So we have the second part of a sentence here, but not the first part of the sentence, because we don't know who's doing what. Sentence fragments are interesting things. You have to know what a sentence is composed of in order to understand when a sentence fragment is taking place. But be careful. Sometimes fragments are intentional and done for emphasis. So how do we fix this? Well, we need to know what a sentence is. We need to know that it needs at least a subject and a verb, usually a subject, verb, and object to be a complete thought. I know that was a lot. And that's just a brief overview, and we only hit 9 of those 20 most common errors. There'll be more workshops to come. If you still need help, come to the Writing Center.